26 degrees outside. It's Thursday, January the 24th. I'm freezing. Let's take a walk. What's your name? Hey, Scout. Oh, sorry, Scout. Hi. See you guys later. See you, Scout. You too. Say hi, Mike. How you doing? This is the man right here. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is, why the Sacred Commons? Why did you name the church the Sacred Commons? What's the meaning? What's the purpose? And I thought today would be a good day to break that down. Back inside where it's warm. That dog was cute. Scout. I wish I didn't have allergies. If I didn't have allergies, I'd get me a Scout. So why the Sacred Commons? It's actually quite simple, but it goes deep. Let me explain. Why the Sacred Commons? Why did we call it that name? Well, traditionally within church history and just history in general, something that was for all people, something that was for everybody would be described as common or commons. Colleges, for example, had a commons hall or a dining hall. Commons can also be understood as resources that groups of people manage and share for the collective benefit of everybody. An example of this would be the Book of Common Prayer, a really well-known prayer book from the Anglican tradition. So for something to be common, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's basic or bland, but instead it's a beautiful word that means that it belongs to everybody. It belongs to all people for the benefit and nourishment of all people. Now that's commons. Let's talk about the word sacred. Let's go to the chapter. So let's talk about the word sacred. Sacred simply means connected to God. It's the essence of being rooted in the divine reality. The flip side of being sacred is the idea that nothing is connected to God, and we call that secularism. To be secular is not necessarily listening to non-Christian music or enjoying a glass of wine. Many folks grew up in homes and cultures that associated holiness with external conformity, usually resulting in a long list of do's and don'ts. And if you're really sacred and you're really holy, then you don't do a long list of things. But this culture that was fixated on superficial things, it really hurt a lot of people, because a lot of folks were able to abstain from all the don'ts and do nots, but at the same time they were really mean and malicious and unloving. And Jesus called those folks like that whitewashed tombs. And you can seal yourself up in a room all day doing absolutely nothing and be utterly unholy. Because the life of faith is active, and Jesus gave us things to do. Actively living the life of faith, that's real holiness. And so secularism has been misunderstood. You see, to the secular mind, nothing in the world is connected to God. Nothing is ontologically sacred. Brian Zahnd, let me get the paper out, says it like this. To the secular mind, the sacred is at most a conferred idea, a symbolic gesture, not a genuine reality. But here's the problem for the Christian. We connect a lot of things to God. We believe that every human being is made in the image of God. Not only that, we believe that the Word became flesh, that there is an actual sacredness of being, that ordinary, everyday things can somehow be connected to God. The same Jesus who was found among rags and in a manger can be found in what Rachel Held Evans calls the strange places, in ordinary, everyday things like bread and wine, things like oil and water, in the Word, in suffering, in community, and among the least of these. She goes on to say that in a world where many people hold faith as just a category of abstractions to agree to, or a set of propositions to affirm, the tangible, tactile nature of the sacraments invite us to touch and smell, taste and hear, and to see God in the stuff of everyday life again. She says about the sacraments that they got God out of her head and into her hands. And I love this part. She says, Christianity is not meant to be simply believed. It's meant to be lived and shared, eaten and spoken and enacted in the presence of other people. God chose ordinary, everyday things over the spectacle. No fog machines or laser shows required. Instead, he gave us a meal. This is at the heart of having a sacred or sacramental imagination. We push back at the modern impulse of reductionism, reducing everything down to mere symbol and to mere human activity. A person who believes in the sacred believes that these things, through the means of grace, can be touching a divine reality. See, when you reduce worship to just a bottom-up expression instead of a top-down encounter, you actually rob the faith of mystery, you rob the faith of contemplation, you make it imbalanced, and now it's just what's left, information, right? Information-oriented type of faith. And we live in an era of information overload. There's a good quote. The last thing any of us need is more information about God. We need the practice of incarnation by which God saves the lives of those whose intellectual ascent has turned them dry as dust, who have run frighteningly low on the bread of life, who are dying to know more God in their bodies, not more about God, but more God. Is there anything wrong with the set of propositions? Not at all. But there's a whole lot of affirmers out there of the faith who don't live or act like the Jesus that they affirm. Abstract knowledge is great, but it doesn't always translate into practice. That was one of the unintended consequences of the Reformation. The result was something called excarnation. Excarnation is the disembodying of the Christian faith, where before it was embodied through tangible, touchable, sacramental things. One of the unintended byproducts of the Reformation was that it launched the faith into a more heady direction, boiling it down to a message to be grasped with the mind. And this is what we call brains on a stick Christianity. God facts. Google has God facts. It's not that we don't need information, we do. It's just that we need more than information to be formed. We need to hold and taste and smell and feel and embody the faith. Worship is not our show or our expression, it's an encounter more so with His grace and the means thereof. God still acts in the world, and we can find that sacred connection through ordinary, everyday things. And that's good. So let's take a break for a second and do some quick announcements. Reverend Gail Cantanella is going to be with us this weekend, this Saturday, and I'm so excited about it. She's actually the pastor, the priest here at where we gather, at St. John's. Reverend Gail Cantanella, she's awesome, and she will be with us, joining us for communion this Saturday. I won't tell the full story here, but I met Reverend Gail a couple years ago, actually at the YSU Arts Festival, and I walked up to her. I saw her with her collar on. I asked her a question. She gave me an answer. And from that moment to today, she has been such a blessing in our lives. She is kind. She is gracious. She's loving. She's understanding. And for Diana and I, she's formational in our walk. So she's going to be with us Saturday on the 26th in the chapel at St. John's for the Sacred Commons. And we're stoked about this. We're still going to have our regular service. I'll be preaching, etc. Please come. I want you to get to know her, ask her questions, discover her for yourself, and find out why she's awesome. Okay, let's close this out. So yeah, that's why we're here. That's why our name is the Sacred Commons. Sacred, God still acts and is connected to everyday people, places, and things like you and I. And commons because we gather around the common roots of our faith. that is for the benefit and the nourishment of all people from all places at all times everywhere. And if that sounds right to you, welcome to the Sacred Commons. Come and join us for service Saturdays at 4, this Saturday at 4 p.m. in the Chapel of St. John's, 323 Wick Avenue, Youngstown, Ohio. It is still cold outside, but I'm gonna head out there. I have a little bit of daylight left, and I'm gonna leave you with some 26-degree footage of Youngstown and a really good quote from James K.A. Smith to round this video off on this typical January in Ohio kind of day. So thank you for watching, and how about this? Why don't you head on over and click that subscribe button, ring that bell, like, share, all of the above, and we thank you for the love, and we'll see you soon. Peace.